goodness, it is so nice to see so many smiling faces packed so closely together.
So many.
We really hope everyone is able to find places to sit, and if not, you're going to get to meet really nice people who are super cozy next to you. Speaking of being super cozy, before I introduce our panel, I just want to name that things are not super easy right now talking about politics. Things can be a little overwhelming talking about politics. And oftentimes we're talking about politics maybe hunched over like a computer and not necessarily looking at each other. So I'm going to just name that we're in a group of more than 100 people talking politics and drinking. What could go wrong? Absolutely nothing is going to go wrong because we're going to be courteous and we're going to listen to each other and we're going to have a lot of laughs talking about politics. Yes, it is true and it can be done, and that is because of the panel to my left, not politically speaking necessarily, but we have Rick Pluta, Senior Capitol Correspondent for the Michigan Public Radio Network right here.
Thanks for coming.
We have Adrian Heeman next. He is CEO of Grassroots Midwest and a friend of It's Just Politics. Hello, Adrian.
Thanks for having me.
I should note also Adrian at part-time acts as a bouncer. So he's the one we're throwing out if need be. We're watching y'all.
Things get rough.
When things get rough, we call
Adrian.
In more ways than one. Politics, too. And then, of course, the one, the only John Selleck, chief strategist and CEO of Harbor Strategic. He's just already waving. He was already waving to everyone.
And they're
I
also
can't
the
wait until you take us on that cruise or the European trip, or we're all going. So just make sure you sign up right there in the corner.
True. It's true. John and Adrian going to Bavaria together.
And they're also the co-hosts of the Take Off Your Hat, Please.
We run a little
Bipartisan podcast.
Mutt and Jeff show called Baldly Bipartisan because the hair only grows in my ears now, not so well on my head.
See, politics can be fun. On that note, we're going to talk for a little while. We're going to talk about the things that we find fascinating right now about politics, but then we are so opening it up to your questions because that's really why we're here, is to have some community dialogue about what the heck is going on in our state right now. But John Selleck, let's start first with the big marquee race that everyone is sort of watching and talking about, which of course is that Gretchen Whitmer's on her way out. Right? She's got, it's true. She's got, what, about 9 months left in office?
She said Big Gretch out at the end of her speech.
Right,
I think she's already done.
At the end of her State of the State speech, she went Big Gretch out like that. And there are a lot of people who would like her job. Give us the...
And a lot of people who wouldn't.
How many people would want to be governor of Michigan? Let's just see hands. Oh, snap, there's like 4. That's
and at least
funny.
one person with bad judgment.
I was going to say, at least one of those people is more qualified than the field, but go on.
So, John, will you give us the lay of the land? Like, what is so fascinating? Why are we all obsessed with this race right now, and why is his name Mike Duggan?
Because there's something seriously wrong with us.
We know
True.
that.
Right. Well, there's a lot of reasons. First, Michigan is a purple state. Donald Trump's won 2 of the last 3 elections here. We typically elect governors 2 times in a row. We give them their second term, and then we show them the door, and we take the other party in. So will that be the case this time? Are we going to automatically go from Democrat to Republican, but we also face the other?
Which is almost always the case.
It is, right? We had to go way back to find a time where that didn't happen. The countervailing force, which is probably a lot larger, is that the party that's in power in the White House usually loses the midterms. And so we have President Trump doing all his best or worst. I'm looking for some kind of laugh here.
John is the needy one in Baldly Bipartisan, so as much clapping as possible. He really is appreciative.
John made a joke. Can you let him know?
I believe the turn of phrase is, please clap.
No, but you're right. we don't know what is going to happen.
No, we don't. And then take a look at.
We don't know what's going to happen while we're in here.
That's right. Take a look how important Michigan is already for the next presidential campaign. We just had Rahm Emanuel here 2 weeks ago, or a week ago. We had Kentucky Governor Andy Bashar in Michigan today saying he should be the next president. The presidential campaign's already running concurrently with all the other races that we have going here. It's a really big deal. And then the obvious big thing here that would make it different this time around in a way that actually matters is that we have an independent candidate who sort of has a shot.
How many folks are paying attention to independent candidate Mike Duggan and his running? Yeah. Michigan, Adrian, is an interesting state because there's Democrats, there's Republicans, but there is a hearty bunch of independents in every single race, and this is really who Mike Duggan is going after.
Yeah, I think former Mayor Duggan is going after independents, but he's also going after voters that don't map neatly onto the two parties, right? And for as much as our politics has become nationalized, it is actually the case that there are a lot of voters out there that don't fit super neatly into those two camps, right? We're going to talk about competitive congressional races later. One of the regions of the state that sort of exemplifies this is the 8th Congressional District, where you have a lot of, white ethnic Catholics and their descendants, right? Working class union members who are also pretty pro-life and pretty pro-gun. Are those people Democrats? Are they Republicans? They've been trending towards Donald Trump, but is that what it means to be a Republican going forward? So there are a lot of unanswered questions out there, and Mayor Duggan is trying to capitalize on that, right, by sort of hoovering up independents and hoovering up people who feel like they don't necessarily fit with the party that they've been mapped onto and that they may have voted for in the past. And that wouldn't work for most people. But Mayor Duggan has two really important advantages that make it possible for him to at least credibly do this. Number one, he was mayor of the state's largest city and the state's largest media market, where we're all sitting right now, where 50% of the state's population lives. And also,
I think they're all in this room right now.
Yeah. And also, he has access to fantastical sums of money. And this is politics, after all.
You may notice during the course of the night when money is talked about, Adrian gets very happy. Like, he's thinking, how do I get on that money?
Like, I own a political consulting business. I do politics for money, as it turns out. He's got access to fantastical sums of money because he is very well liked by both a lot of captains of industry, but also a lot of sort of titans of organized labor. He has been a political operative basically since Moses wore short pants. And so he's got a lot of relationships that he can leverage to try to raise funds for his campaign and try to raise, frankly, money that none of us will ever see.
So, John, how do Democrats, and really there's sort of 1.5 Democrats running right now on the Democratic side, and how do the 150,000 Republicans who are running on the Republican side, how do they run against an independent like Mike Duggan right now when they're still in the primary?
Well, right now there's only one side that's running against him, and it's the Michigan Democratic Party.
It's fascinating.
And the most important thing you have in campaigns, even though we love talking about campaign cash, is time, because there's a finite amount of time. You can raise more money, but you can't make more time. Election day is already ticking down. And when you watch how the Democrats are spending their time right now, they're spending a lot of time attacking Mike Duggan. The chair of the Michigan Democratic Party is named Curtis Hertel, super smart, political operative, great guy. He's walking around wearing a black t-shirt that has white letters on it that says, "Don't do Duggan." Right? So he's spending his time as the attack dog on Mike Duggan, and then every time they
Isn't
think
that name ID?
What's that?
Isn't he giving him name ID?
Yeah, but that tells you how afraid they are when they look at the polling numbers. Clearly, Mike Duggan's going to take a chunk out of the Republicans, a chunk out of the Dems. If you watch how often the Republicans are talking about Duggan, which is 0, and then you look at how much time the Democrats are spending talking about it, they see in their polling numbers a lot more danger for Jocelyn Benson, especially if you consider she lives in the city of Detroit. She thinks, I'm going to come out of here with a whole lot of votes like Democrats traditionally do, a huge lead on Republicans, but she's got the just formerly sitting mayor of Detroit sitting there in a lot of polling numbers taking about half those votes. That's a real problem for the Democrats.
Yeah, there's something to that, but the flip side of that is that the actual structure of the Michigan Republican Party is barely functional right now. Some of you may have received an email solicitation about how you too can speak from the stage at the convention for a mere $10,000. I put an offer out to the MIGOP on Twitter, like I have the money. I'm not going to say nice things on stage, but if you you'll take my money, I'll absolutely
we could
do
put
it.
our show up there.
Yeah, right.
For 10
A mere
grand,
10 grand. So, like the state GOP as a party, like that actual institution, not the candidates, has been through some really rough times the last few years. And so, typically, it would be the role of the state GOP, the state party, to be attacking this independent candidate the same way that the Michigan Dems are doing. But they don't have really the resources of the organization to do that. They also have a front runner that, unlike Jocelyn Benson, is close to invisible in some ways on the campaign trail, despite being a sitting member of Congress. And so I think that there's definitely something to what you say, where there is a lot of trepidation on the Dem side about Mayor Duggan's candidacy. I don't know if that's so much because of them being afraid of him taking more votes from them than from the Republicans, or if it's because they're Democratic political operatives are uniquely acquainted with what Mike Duggan is capable of. Ask me how I know.
What is, and this is for both of you, so Mike Duggan seems to be in a pretty good position right now, but it's the beginning of the campaign. We don't officially know who the nominees of the Republican and Democratic parties is going to be. What is Mike Duggan? What should he be most afraid of right now?
I think the thing for me is when a pollster calls somebody right now, like when you guys leave here and your phone rings and you actually spend the time to talk to a pollster, it's pretty easy here in March to say, yeah, I'm open. I'm pissed. I'm sick of this system. I don't know if I like Jocelyn Benson. Sure, I'd consider this independent guy. But when it comes down to actually showing up in the ballot box, especially if you like to vote straight ticket for Democrats, it's going to get a lot trickier. So I think that's the thing that the Duggan campaign has to watch out for, that the attention they're getting now will maybe not turn into actual votes later, especially because he started so early. And I'm not saying you felt this way, but I really think the media looked at him and said, that is fun. Like, let's follow that. He got a ton of attention for this independent campaign that nobody saw coming. Even his staff claims that he told them, oh, by the way, I'm going to run as an independent and do this thing. And none of us would have ever taken anyone else except for our friend Jason Rowe running as an independent for governor, except for Mike Duggan. And that's what people are doing for now.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think the other thing that he's got to worry about is he has some structural disadvantages compared to the partisan candidates. You know, in our infinite wisdom in this country, we subsidize the two major American political cartels. And one of the ways that we do that is ballot access, right? If you win the partisan primary for governor, congratulations, here's your ballot access. Mike Duggan's going to have to spend a few $1 million to get ballot access because he's going to have to pay for signatures at the exorbitant rates that we all have to pay for signatures now. Some of you probably saw the nice gentleman out there collecting signatures to repeal the First Amendment earlier. He's being paid to do that, right? And Mike Duggan
calls on that one, Adrian. We're going to get calls on that one.
Mike Duggan has to pay for his signatures, right? He's going to have to pay a few $1 million in hard money for his ballot access, not in the sort of soft corporate dollars that warm the cockles of a political consultant like mine's heart.
But we don't expect that he's not going to be on the ballot.
No, but it's another structural disadvantage that he faces, just like the two political parties. Another subsidy that their nominated candidates are going to receive is that they're going to get a nonprofit discount on their direct mail, right? Because the political parties are nonprofits. Mwah, magnifique. And so they're going to get a nonprofit discount on their direct mail, and Mayor Duggan's not going to get that, right? He's going to have to pay full freight to the United States Postal Service because his campaign is not a nonprofit in that way that those tax-exempt organizations are.
He's even said he has a disadvantage structurally just within fighting with Democrats because we all know now we have to, if we're going to give small dollar contributions, we'll go through the apps on our phone. The Democrats, as you probably, if we made you raise your hand, there's a lot of people who gave money through Act Blue. And that's how a Democrat like Jocelyn Benson would get her $5 every week or every month out of each and every one of you. Mike Duggan can't do that. And he can't use the Republican app when red either. So he's admitted in interviews they're having to try to create their own structure to do that. So his fundraising so far that's been really, really good is based almost solely on major donors who are maxing out at the total amount, there's only so many of those people hanging off those trees, so you're going to have to figure out how to compete a different way.
Infrastructure matters. I mean, in the end, it absolutely does. You guys know that, and more than most. Okay, that is the governor's race. We also have a marquee U.S. Senate race. This is the first time since direct elections that we have an open gubernatorial race, right? Meaning that there is no incumbent, and an open U.S. Senate race in the same time. And so Adrian again starts drooling because the amount of money, but apologies to you all, because the amount of advertisements is like, you think it's been bad before. Because also the entire state house and the entire state senate up for election, as is the entire state's congressional delegation. We're going to have 2 state Supreme Court races, and then there's ballot initiatives. So before we open it up to questions, because we're the hosts, I get to do my own thing that I am absolutely obsessed with this election season, and that is, you guys know what it is, right?
Can I say it?
I'm scared right now. What's coming?
The con.
Oh, the chaos grenade.
The chaos grenade. This is known as a con, but it's really called a constitutional convention, and it comes up like cicadas. Every 16 years, the con just suddenly pops up. And you, Michigan voters, will get to decide whether you want an entire rewriting of the state constitution. No joke. This is for real. The last time this happened was 2010. The last time before that, 16 years earlier, and 16 years earlier. Every single time it has been on the ballot since the 1962 Constitution that put it in the ballot, it has gone down, but by a smaller percentage each time. And so I'm really fascinated by the Constitutional Convention, not only just because the idea of completely rewriting a constitution that has seen so many changes over the past decade, right? Enshrining of reproductive freedom, independent redistricting campaigns, voting reforms, all of those things up to be rewritten.
Go further back, the Headley Tax Limitation Amendment.
Right.
And the reason I bring that up is because a lot of conservatives might be interested in undoing a lot of the progressive victories at the ballot to write these things into the state constitution. But there are a lot of things in the state constitution, or some cases maybe aren't in the state constitution, that would give conservatives hives.
Yeah.
I mean, it's everything.
So
all of these things could be undone and rewritten.
I don't know. It's so obvious that Americans are all getting along and love each other so much that we would
Right, it
have
would be
thoughtful,
great.
deep conversation
Yep.
and come up with the best solutions to all our problems together.
Yeah. No, but isn't there something sort of lovely about the idea that could happen? I mean, not that we're advocating for it or against it, but that we in 1962 put this in the Constitution as like maybe we should try that. But I guess, Adrian, you called it, what did you call it? A chaos grenade?
The chaos grenade.
Okay, so is it a possibility at all that this could pass this year?
Sure, it's possible if somebody decides to get behind it with some money.
Explain.
Notice the theme. Passing a constitutional convention would require a lot of messaging to people, because there are a lot of moneyed interests who would get their ox gored by having a constitutional convention. Right? There are a lot of goodies written into the state constitution for a lot of different moneyed interests, both companies, organized laborers, even some of the nonprofit racketeers out there have got stuff in our state constitution, right? So there's, you would need to get somebody behind it with some money. There are some candidates out there that you could think of that this would make sense to get money and organization behind. The first one that comes to mind is Right to Life of Michigan, right? If you are a member of Right to Life of Michigan, how could it possibly get any worse in terms of what our state constitution looks like after the Reproductive Freedom Amendment passed? I imagine probably most people in this room are supporters of that, but put yourself in the shoes of somebody who's like 100% pro-life voter. Why wouldn't you roll the dice on writing a new constitution at this point if that's your number one issue? So that's the lens through which you should evaluate who might possibly get behind having a constitutional convention. That being said, if that question actually passes on the ballot, like, I can't emphasize enough what a bonanza that would be for me personally. So I just want to make that clear to everyone. Like, right now I'm on track to retire by about 60. I turn 50 in October, and I'll probably retire in like a year after the Constitutional Convention actually happens. If the voters, in their infinite wisdom, decide to do this, what will happen is we'll immediately have a set of elections based on the current state legislative districts to elect Constitutional Convention delegates. There are no campaign finance limits for those elections. Okay, so that's the first fun part for me.
Because it's not written in the Constitution.
Right, there are no campaign finance limits. Once those delegates are elected, they are not subject to Michigan's lobby law. Bonanza number 2, right? Like, I'm earning money hand over fist at this point. So this would be a bonanza for political consultants. Whether you support rewriting our state's constitution or not, I do think it's important to realize like what that process would look like, which is that everyone who cares about politics that has 2 nickels to rub together is going to try to buy themselves some Constitutional Convention delegates to try to gum up the process so that they can get their goodies into the Constitution instead of the goodies that are there right now.
And John, I think it's important to note too that the rewriting would let's say it happens. Let's say voters vote in favor, then a whole new constitution is rewritten. We should note that you then as voters would get to vote on whether you wanted that new constitution. I think that's a really important asterisk just to put out there as we kind of go
that's
down
a great point
hole.
that we could go through this entire bonanza, right? And I could make enough money to retire in a period of like 48 months, and then the voters could decide, you know what, never mind. Yeah. Which, you know, at that point, I'm good.
There's also it's very unlikely if it comes down to having a con, but a constitutional convention could convene. And they could go through all of that and then go, you know what we've got isn't all that bad. And
that's also another possibility. But I still make all the money,
And
which
then
is, that's the
we
great
have
part, is
that
that like
tree.
once you guys pass it, like I get the money.
Just imagine, I already made my joke. I don't think it's a great idea. And I'm not saying like if it happens, I'm right with him. We're going to be taking whatever we can get our hands on. Just imagine like if we're holding this thoughtful, deep discussion up here, like we're the legislature, we're debating things, and then right downstairs there's basically like a bar fight going on the entire time. That is what it would be like, because new Governor Mike Duggan, John James, Jocelyn Benson will be trying to lead the state down their path, where down the street or wherever this chaos grenade is going off, and the media will have to double inside. It might be good, and then you could argue for NPR funding in the state constitution.
Indeed, there is a publication in Lansing that tracks sort of politics day to day that was created specifically to track what was happening with the Constitutional Convention back in the 60s. Like it literally creates new businesses out of whole cloth. God bless America.
Well,
Yeah.
okay, God
I
bless
just literally hesitate to think that whoever becomes governor next in their first year or two will be able to conduct the normal business and then also keep their eye off that
not
other thing
knowing
over
that
there.
they necessarily would be eligible for a second term.
Also,
that's
yeah.
so true. I didn't even think about that. That's so meta. Okay, we have made this all about the things that we're interested in, and so now we're super excited to open it up to you, whether you have questions about more ballot proposals, congressional races. I am looking to see who is got the mic.
Oh, and by the way, just
over
the
here?
microphone rules.
Oh, yes.
That someone will come to you. We have 2 people out there wandering with a microphone. It's their microphone. It's not your microphone.
And also,
You don't get to hold the microphone.
And also
you
it
get
is
to talk into it.
Q&A, not comment and A. Okay, Kaloli has the microphone over here, so go ahead.
Lily has her microphone.
Okay, if you'll raise your hand, and we'll call on you, and then we, I guess, ask your first name and where you're from. And we've got one right there, Kaloli. Yeah.
Sorry.
I know you want to grab it. I love the self-control, though. I appreciate it.
You're an example for everyone.
What do you see as the major issues in the campaign for governor this year?
Yeah, that's a great question. Who wants to go first?
I mean, property taxes are going to be.
Sure. No,
Big
property taxes are not going to be the biggest issue in the race.
I said a big.
I think that maybe, I mean, if the speaker gets his way, I think the biggest issue is going to be the issue that put Kamala Harris on PAC watch, right? It's the economy. People are feeling very unsettled right now, in particular about consumer prices for their most important household purchases. That's groceries, that's gas. Gas prices not doing great this week for a variety of reasons that are outside the scope of state politics. We're not going to talk about that right now. But consumer prices are not doing great. And honestly, people don't think of themselves this way, right? But everybody who's in this room is in like the top 2% of most politically informed people in the country, right? Most people
Just for being here.
You're paying attention, right? Most
Give yourself
people,
a pat on the back.
yeah, most people make their voting decisions based on vibes, right? And the most important vibe is, how's my family doing? How much does stuff cost, right? When I went to buy shoes for my daughter for tap or ballet, how much did that cost, right? How much did it cost when I filled up my crossover SUV? These are the questions that actually determines people's voting behavior. It's not ideology, because most people don't care about ideology. They care about how much stuff costs and how their family's doing. And so that's going to be the number one issue in the gubernatorial election is, what are you going to do about how much it sucks to pay for things for my family right now?
John, it goes back right to the James Carville, it's the economy, stupid. Is it ever not about the economy?
No.
I'm John.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
No, then I mean, then why do candidates allow themselves, or I guess campaign managers allow them to talk about anything other than? I mean, we saw Abigail Spamberger, we saw Mikey Sherrill, right? These are two gubernatorial candidates who did nothing but talk about affordability, the price of things. Zora Mandami, I mean, they won as Democrats.
And then they raised taxes right after they got elected.
But I mean, like, what is it that allows?
If you're going to raise taxes, that's the time to do it.
Right at the beginning. What is it, though, about allowing to go off message right now? Because it's going to happen. I mean, we can say affordability is what the main issue should be, but will it remain that way come November?
Well, early on, we've seen the two Democrats, because they are Mike Duggan and Jocelyn Bentz have kind of like bickered about healthcare with each other, and it's almost like they have spies in each other's camp. They found the other guy is going to talk about healthcare, so they hurry up and rush out their healthcare plan, and the other person's talking about housing, and then the other person rushes out their housing plan. John James has been talking about parental-centered issues and education and all this other stuff. But almost all these issues have the same thread through them, and it is cost, not the parental side so much, but clearly healthcare does. Rick said property taxes. That's an area where Speaker Matt Hall, who we haven't talked much about yet, and Governor Whitmer have already announced essentially they have some kind of common ground. And every time we see the two of them mention the same thing, like Selfridge Air Force Base, there's suddenly a new runway being funded. So the two of them tend to work together
And
on certain
property
issues. And
taxes is really housing.
it is. That's right.
Which people really care about right now. Because
Well, it's all cost.
You've got kids living in the basement because they can't get married, move out.
Okay, I lied. It's not just about costs. It's get our kids out of the frickin' basement. That's what it's. I have 4.
That's the campaign slogan for John.
Also, you mentioned campaign managers. I mean, we could do like a rehab session up here counseling about campaign manager life forever. That's torture. But costs are going to be the biggest thing. What they can actually talk about that matters, at least at the state level, is really limited unless you come up with specific things. Democrats have had a lot of gimmicky things, like we reduced a shred of income taxes for seniors. Here, we're going to do a little thing over here for property taxes. If it's real and you can put it in an ad and it passes the legal muster on TV, they're going to say it. But what happens above them, nobody on the state level, even with the insane amount of money that'll be spent on the governor's race, they're going to have to follow what's happening at the national level, all the way down to the local level, basically, because all the information everybody gets on their phones, on their laptops, in their podcasts, are all coming from what is being fought over at the national level. And we're going to hear a lot about cost and affordability.
That's a great point, and it actually ties in with something that you said at the beginning, right? Which is that there are these countervailing forces, right? Part of the reason why affordability and cost was such an effective issue for Republicans in the 2024 presidential election was because there was a Democrat in the White House. Now there's a Republican in the White House, and so people are more likely to blame the Republican. Except that there's a Democrat that's the governor right now. So there are these countervailing forces where, normally the president gets blamed for the economy, although typically has little control of that. Obviously, President Trump is doing his best to disprove that. But also, these candidates for governor are actually on the ballot, and the president's not. And
You
there's
can
a
only register your dissatisfaction politically by voting on who's on the ballot.
That's right. And, right now we have a Democratic governor. So some of this is, we know that costs and affordability are going to be the most important issue, but who are voters going to blame for how things are going right now?
One thing we should note, though, that I think is fascinating I guess this is going to be a little self-serving plug, but if you listen to It's Just Politics, to the podcast today, we had Richard Shuva on, who is just insanely good pollster, who I always learn something from when we talk to him. And today, he was the only guest on the show. We went the whole time just with him. And one of the polls that he just did was about how we rate ourselves. Right? So how do we think the state is doing? That may be around literacy. Maybe it's about per capita income. And what he found was fascinating, which is that we rate ourselves crazy high for how we're doing. We're Michiganders and we're doing okay and we're great. And things like we were 28th, we rated ourselves in per capita income. You know what we are? In the 40s. I mean, time and time again. And so we asked him, though, what is that going to mean for this election? Because what it sounds like is people in Michigan right now are actually feeling like we're on the right track.
Yeah, it's actually the inverse of my fitness journey, or what I refer to my fitness journey, which is from sad bod to dad bod. So we're actually, our perception is exactly the reverse in Michigan. We think we're mid, but we're actually not.
Yeah, we're not mid. No. Anyway, so I would highly recommend listening to that conversation, just because I learned so much about what that could also mean for the election. Okay.
I think there's something tied there to Governor Whitmer's approval rating.
Oh, 110%, which
Right.
is that she is.
Which is basically her approval rating.
Go ahead, John. I know where you're going. Please.
Oh, I should let Rick talk one time. I mean, she's in one poll, she was at 60% approval rating, and at best, that means it's an inch deep and a mile wide, but she's curated that very carefully. She's good at this game, but she also does not try to expend any of the 60% to do something hard, because it would collapse, boom, like that. So she is the cheerleader, not only for herself, but for the state all the time. Kind of contributes to this idea that we might be doing okay. If you're not mad at the governor, the person that's in charge, oh, well, maybe things are sort of okay. I mean, the TikTok account is funny. We must be doing good.
I've made a career out of being a mile wide and an inch deep. Honestly, being a dilettante, great business practice.
Oh,
That's why you're
snap.
here.
Okay, let's go to the next question. Let's see, we've got one right in the back, way there. Way there, right over there, way there. Sure.
El Sayed, McMurrow, and Stevens are all acceptable to me. I've met them all. I've donated to some of them at one point or another. But when are they going to have a debate and get this settled? Because right now they're in a circular firing squad, and Mike Rogers has an open field.
Yeah, so let's just put that into context. This is the U.S. Senate race that we quickly alluded to as being open right now. And on the Republican side, Mike Rogers, hands if you know who Mike Rogers is. Yep, exactly. Mike Rogers has run for Senate before. In fact, just 2 years ago. He is a former congressman. And he really has the Republican side of the field, and again, the open U.S. Senate race locked down. But on the Democratic side, it's a three-way race, and boy, it's getting a little spicy. And we are not going to necessarily know who is going to win until August. Well, we for sure won't know until the primary in August. And polling shows them really close. I mean, John, as a political strategist, when you see a three-way race like this, where really it's kind of a circular firing squad, I don't know what to make of this. I mean, no one's going to step down. So is this just how it's going to be until August?
I think you're right. No one is going to step down. They all want it. They all think it's their turn to do it.
And it's their moment. It's not going to come back.
It's not. I mean, the fact that we have back-to-back open U.S. Senate races, besides being really annoying for our time on our cell phones or watching Netflix and getting ads, I looked back through all the U.S. senators who voluntarily didn't run for re-election back to when we used the popular vote in like 1911 or whatever to start voting for senators.
Nerd.
Gary Peters is the only one basically that did it. You either died or you went to prison. That was the only reason you didn't run for re-election.
And sometimes both.
So it is very interesting that Gary Peters is like, I'm out of here. This is really annoying. And I'm going to make a lot of money now probably, right? Yeah. He's going to do fine for himself. It's a huge problem for Democrats because they're trying to win back the Senate, and they always count Michigan in their column. We've only had one Republican U.S. senator going back to like 1978 or something like that, and it was Spence Abraham for one term right before Debbie Stabenow. Thank you. I should have asked you first. Who was it? Bob Griffin. See, I knew that. All right. Thank you, sir. You want to stand up? Applause.
I was going to say, we brought our own hecklers with us.
Long-time listener,
Full service.
first-time caller.
Yeah, we just don't see two back-to-back U.S. Senate seats be open. And then for Democrats, they can't win the U.S. Senate back if they're giving away Michigan. They count that in their column. So that's Jason's point. That's history's point. They're looking at this thing, and they're freaking out. Plus, strangely, other states are smarter than us. They hold their primaries way sooner, so you don't have to deal with this garbage all the time. We have to go, like Texas, North Carolina last night, Arkansas. They all handled their primaries last night. Well, Texas kind of did.
Sort of.
We wait until August to do this, so we're going to watch that circular firing squad. Democrats are very nervous about this. And the energy in the party, just to sum it up, obviously is on the progressive side for Democrats, except they have two of them running against beating each other up. And then Haley Stevens should be able to scoot through, kind of like Gretchen Whitmer did in 2018 against also Syed and Shri Tanadar, now congressman. But they're beating her up, and it's not just on issues. It's like high school. It's like Mean Girls.
No, it kind of
Yeah.
is. Adrian, I mean, this race really is also sort of a microcosm of the Democratic Party as a whole right now, in terms of the sort of progressive versus establishment Democratic Party, and who are they going to be when they grow up?
Yeah, I definitely think that that's a through line in this race is the sort of progressives are feeling their oats right now, partly because of the win that they got in New York City, right? Which was like water in the desert, because progressives have had a rough time actually winning elections. They've won some primaries in some places and gotten blown out, but they've had a tough time winning elections. And they actually got one of their folks elected in New York City, and so they're feeling their oats a little bit right now. I do think it's interesting. I don't think the comp in this race is the 2018 race for Gretchen Whitmer. I actually think it's 2010 for Rick Snyder. In the sense that you have Haley Stevens, who's trying to sort of amble along and shoot the gap and take the slings and arrows because she's not the cool kid, compared with the other two kids who are like, they're the new hotness, right? Like you have Mallory McMorrow, who is, at least if you listen to her consultant Liz, a social media star. I talked to way more reporters from Washington, D.C. who know who Mallory McMorrow is than residents of the state of Michigan. But I mean, she's been raising money online and is obviously super popular with a certain type of progressive, by which I mean white, female, over 50, and extremely affluent. And then you have, hats off, ladies.
There are folks in the audience who are like, I resemble that remark.
And then you have Abdul Al Sayed, who's very popular with a lot of people I know, by which I mean gym bros. Those are my people, by the way. I love you
Working on
guys.
that dad bod.
Rick Snyder opened his closet every day, and there's just a blue jacket and a blue shirt. And Abdullah opens his closet, and it's just all black T-shirts. Really,
It's all black
right?
T-shirts that are like a size too small. I admire that sort of behavior. But yeah, and so you have these two candidates that are, they're the sort of hotness in the Democratic Party, right? They enthuse activists, the sort of people who get on Twitter and shout at you when you express a political opinion that's like a tenth of an inch away from theirs. Those people love those two candidates. The people who actually vote in Democratic primaries are in general not the progressives that scream at you online, right? They tend to be people who like the median Dem primary voter in a statewide election in Michigan is a black woman who's in a church pew every Sunday. It's not someone who screams at you on Twitter because they don't like your opinions. And so it's going to be very interesting to see, like, number one, are there enough of the Twitter screamers to elect or to nominate a progressive? And number two, can these two work this out? Like, will one of them get out of the race? And I think the only way that happens is if the money dries up. And that doesn't seem likely.
I think that's a really interesting point for all of you. I mean, a lot of people in this room probably dropped, excuse me, Twitter after Musk took it over, right? And y'all switched over to whatever.
Oh, yeah, it's not Twitter
he's
anymore.
right.
I always forget that.
Yeah, right. Nobody calls it that. So he's failed on branding on that for sure. Nobody wants to call it that. It sounds weird. But for the people that are on X watching all this are the media, the Capitol Corps media, the political media, and they start watching all this time, and they try to be cynical and stay back about it. But they're human. They're going to be influenced by this. So the infighting, attacking Haley Stevens 50 times a day from all sides. And then the Republicans gleefully join in with the progressives in attacking Haley just for somehow being, you know, awkward or whatever.
Yeah, I saw, like, I'm not going to name him because, well, he's your former intern and my former intern, but I saw some real spicy stuff on Twitter or whatever you're supposed to call that about Haley Stevens from a Republican operative who works in the White House, our former intern, that, like, I don't know, man, I wouldn't be putting that stuff on the internet, but, like, everyone is sort of gleefully piling on her.
Okay, let's do a really quick lightning round from some online questions. Adrian Margaret wants to know, are you able to split your ticket in a primary election?
No, you have to choose which primary you're going to vote in. Now, as a corollary to that, because people ask me about this all the time with reference to the Duggan question, you can actually vote for Mike Duggan and vote straight ticket, right? So if you punch Mike Duggan's name and you vote straight ticket for Republicans or for Democrats, all your votes down ballot do get counted. And your vote for Mike Duggan gets counted.
But she was asking in the primary.
But in a primary, it's like the Highlander, right? There can be only one. You have to choose.
Okay, the next question is from Ellen, and I think Ellen might have emailed me earlier today, which is why I was able to look this up ahead. But I think Ellen listened to It's Just Politics today, and she said, Michigan is 50th in the nation for salary growth. How much did limiting the minimum wage have to do with this? So what I think Ellen wants to know, right, is there was a change in the minimum wage, and we could go into that more if folks have questions. But it was one of the things that voters rated ourselves higher than we actually were. And so Ellen, I looked, and yes, our minimum wage certainly isn't, it changed. It is not as high as it would have been had there not been the adopted amend and then a Supreme Court decision, which we can go into later if we want to. But Michigan does not by any means have the lowest minimum wage, right? So when you're thinking about it that way, it could be one thing if we had kept our minimum wage really low, that maybe that's why we would see income growth be slowing. But really what it is, I mean, our economy has just dramatically changed in the past decades. You know, we used to be able to, this was before I was born. Folks used to be able to, right, get a job at GM, my grandpa, and build a new house in Plymouth, Michigan, and have a cottage up north and put 3 kids through U of M. We can't do that right now anymore. And it's not just because of manufacturing and the change of how things are working. It's also because of affordability and issues about the price of things.
Yeah.
Adrian, go ahead.
This is my father-in-law, right? My father-in-law, when he was 19 years old, knocked up his teenage girlfriend. And his dad was a foreman at Fisher Body in Lansing. And so he grabbed his son by the collar, said, "Congratulations, you're hired." And he marched him down to the line, and my father-in-law worked there for 30 years, and he retired with a pension and health care. Yep. And that world's gone, right? Part of what has happened with Donald Trump winning Michigan, frankly, has been a reaction to that, right? Because that same 19-year-old kid, like, he's got a baby, but now he works at the Speedway, right? Or the 7-Eleven, instead of having a good-paying union job that he's going to be able to retire on. My mother-in-law never worked a day after she had my wife, right? My father-in-law went and he punched a clock at the plant, and that was good enough. And that world's all gone. I do think the minimum wage thing is super interesting, right? And your friendly neighborhood Democrat is here to tell you that actually the income growth has been the fastest in the states that have never raised their minimum wage. Right?
John?
Is that because they never raised the minimum wage, or is that because
No, it's
they didn't feel the need?
No,
to?
it's because they diversified their economies, right? That same poll that Richard was referring to, they asked people, about the desirability of manufacturing jobs and whether that was a good way to make a living and raise a family. And most people in Michigan will tell you yes, and that answer is false.
Not anymore. Yep. John?
No, simply it's the loss of manufacturing base that this state had is just unfathomable. How many of those jobs went out the window? That's why we still just saw Governor Whitmer in Munich when she, on the one hand, couldn't answer a question about saving Ukraine, but she was saying we need to make Michigan into a industrial base for military and defense services, grow that we have here. It's still about bringing those manufacturing jobs back.
Well, don't forget, too, that a lot of, am I doing this right now? A lot of manufacturing jobs aren't the graduate from high school, your girlfriend is pregnant and now she's your wife and you walk into the factory. They're jobs that require you to have some level of certification,
Right.
a couple of years at a community college, a 4-year college or university degree.
Not even necessarily college, right? But they require a higher degree of skill and training, right? And this is part of the disconnect, and this is part of how politicians have gotten over on voters, not just in Michigan, but in a lot of the upper Midwest. Right, the places that are referred to as the Rust Belt, is they've been out campaigning with voters that I'm going to bring the manufacturing jobs back.
Right.
And they don't mean those jobs that my father-in-law got in the 70s.
Because those jobs don't exist.
Those, yes, they do. They exist in Thailand, and they pay $8 an hour.
Fair. So it's just politics, it's just economy, but we could keep going on and on. Kaloli, let's see. Hands raised for the next question. I think we've got one. Oh, right there.
Yeah, I had a question. If you guys could maybe discuss the 35th District State Senate
Thank you.
race.
I'm so excited.
So you're going to be hosting a forum at Saginaw Valley State later in the month. And 45% of voters are independents. And so that primary that just happened maybe doesn't mean that much, or does it mean something? We're talking about Duggan up here, and then Adrian's talking about political cartel is subsidized for the two parties.
Are you asking about why the Libertarian isn't on stage?
I would like to ask if you would like to talk about why the Libertarian candidate, Allie Sled's the only female,
Yeah.
is being excluded.
Yeah.
But
Well,
also just the race in general, yes, both.
Yes, I'm super excited to talk about the race in general. As the only female on this stage, I'm not only on this stage because I'm a female, so I don't ever just say that a female needs to be on a stage because she's a female. The reason that she just wasn't invited was because she had jumped in after we had put the forum on. It was as simple as that. If she had jumped in months and months ago when we were putting the forum together, she'd have been on the stage. There's not anything more than that. It's these things get put together months and months in advance. So that's the answer to that. But we knew there was going to be a Democrat and a Republican. That's how it works in primaries, right? They had filed, and she didn't file yet. It's really, there's not some big mystery or controversy or conspiracy around it. He hadn't filed by the time we had put it all together. But your question, which I love, about the 35th Senate District. So this is a special Senate seat that is open right now. That is because Kristen McDonald-Rivet, now Congresswoman Kristen McDonald-Rivet, she was a state senator from the 35th Senate seat here in Michigan. She went and she became a congresswoman last year. The seat has been open, so there has been a vacant Senate seat right about here in Michigan. Gretchen Whitmer finally, I'm using the word finally, that's some analysis there, but it took her a minute.
It took a while.
It took a while, and there is now a special election. So you know how when you turn on CNN and they're like, dun, 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 breaking news, there was a special election in Montana, and here's what happened. We're going to be that dun, dun, dun the first week in May. And that is because there is an open seat. We now know who the Democrat is. We now know who the Republican is. I will be helping to host a forum with those two in Saginaw. Saginaw on March 24th. Hope you can be there. But I guess, John, I'm curious about what you're watching for in this special election. Is it really going to take on all the national machinations of somehow this is going to be the be-all, end-all of what's happening? Because you know that's what Jake Tapper is going to do. And I love me some Jake Tapper, but he's going to be like, if the Democrat wins or the Republican wins, it's going to be like, here's what we can take away from it.
It's a bellwether election.
It's a bellwether election. Or is it going to be local?
Maybe. I mean, as we just said, it was a seat held by a Democrat. And the Democrats in charge were certainly nervous about having that election too fast because we won't go into the arcane rules of the Michigan Senate, but if they're not to win this seat, they're going to essentially lose control over the agenda in the Michigan Senate. Instead of having a split legislature, they'll have a mess on their hands. So they sat on that seat and didn't allow people who lived in that district to have representation for a year. Now, I'll also just note, good for Kristen McDonald-Rivet, because in politics, we talk all the time, like being lucky or the right timing is better than a lot of other things. She got to go from nowhere, or real life, to skipping the House, to being in the Senate, to being in Congress in like 4 seconds, right? It's pretty spectacular for her. I don't think the seat is a super big bellwether. I think we see the Republicans have a really solid candidate in Jason Tunney there. We also saw that there were other folks that had bigger names that could have jumped in the race, like Bill Schuette, something like that. They didn't do that. So this race should go to the Democrats. And certainly, as we look every week for something new to talk about, they're going to say, is this a seat Trump should have won? And here comes the Democrats winning the seat. The Democrats have a really good candidate. They're super excited about it. By all means, I think they should be winning the seat, and that wouldn't be a surprise to me.
I finally get a chance to disagree with John. I love it when this happens. Yeah, I mean, there's a reason that national political operatives are crawling all over this district right now, right? And it's because they view it as something of a bellwether, and it's a chance to test out all of their good stuff. I do want to give a shout out to my man to recognizing the scam here, right? There's a reason the filing deadline for third parties is later than it is for the two parties, right? They did that on purpose. And it's not just for this election, it's for all elections, right? Because that's part of the scam.
That is again. Well, and as we were talking about, right, like organization matters. And there's some things that benefit parties. There just are.
Yeah, absolutely. And when the two parties have been in charge for so long, they make sure that the only thing that would be worse than my enemy being in charge is neither of us being in charge. That would be terrible, right? Because I know how to deal with my enemy.
Read it anymore.
Right, exactly.
The real scam is the fact that Governor Whitmer and the Democrats had to make sure they couldn't lose power over the Michigan Senate by letting a seat be empty forever. They're afraid of that. The fact that we're finally getting to that after a year is insanity.
Okay, we're back to agreeing again.
Aw, friends. Before we go to the next question, let me just ask, because we were talking Lansing, and again, what this would mean and why so many folks are watching this race is it will mean whether or not there is a tie, a 19-19 tie in the state Senate. And right now, in, again, her final 9-10 months in office, Governor Gretchen Whitmer, she has a Democratic Senate and a Republican House. John Selleck, how are things in Lansing right now? What's the mood?
It's like a warm cup of hot chocolate by a fire.
Vibe check.
Yeah, right, vibe check.
Look, you have to look at this new entity that popped onto the scene that nobody saw coming. One of my former coworkers, now Speaker of the House, Matt Hall. There's a lot of Democrats who don't like him, hate him, want to run him over with a car. But he is outmaneuvering them time after time after time. And when you talk to them away from a microphone like this, you're like, geez, he just keeps kicking our ass. Like, we can't stay in front of this guy. Governor Whitmer, with her 60% job approval rating, is nowhere to be found. And the Senate Majority Leader, who's a very intelligent person, just isn't into the show. Matt is into the show, and he is a step ahead constantly, very much like Trump, who he does try to imitate, but I've known Matt a long time. He's been a political operative his whole life. He gets the game. He's done a good job, and he's caused Governor Whitmer to agree with him more often, it feels like, than Governor Whitmer and Winnie Brinks have agreed.
80% of the time she told Donald Trump in the Oval Office.
Yeah, Matt Hall is Speaker of the House. Terrible for lobbyists and great for me. Lobbyists have been getting nothing done in Lansing because the legislature's not meeting very often, and when they do, they're not taking up all the cats and dogs priorities that the lobbyists' clients have, which sends their clients scuttling into my arms. It's just fantastic. Thank you, Speaker Matt Hall.
You can see life is good for Adrian Himon right now, isn't it? I'm looking for Kaloli. Oh, yes. Oh, I am so excited about this. Is this just going to make my whole day? Okay, go ahead.
What do last night's elections tell us about Michigan's primary elections?
I just love you so much and your mama so much. I just can't even. John, were you watching Texas last night?
Yes.
Okay, tell us what we can learn from last night's elections in Texas and North Carolina.
We can learn that Donald Trump felt like he knows that if he makes an endorsement in a primary, quite often it's going to be the decision maker. And in the three-way primary for Texas GOP senator, he decided to just endorse all of them because he didn't want to have to pick. He's stuck between a rock and a hard place. He has a U.S. senator who's very high up in the leadership and important to the leadership team for the GOP, and John Cornyn. He's been there since George W. Bush was president, and so he's a little out of touch. Maybe he's not right in line with the MAGA values. And then you have the Attorney General of Texas, who was impeached by the Republican House of Texas for some of his behavior, but he's the MAGA guy. And they made that race very close. They were 1 point apart. There was a third party in that race. You got 13%. So, a lot of this will have to do with where will those 13% go? How will that fight take place? Their follow-up election will be in May. So they're suffering through 3 elections because they have the primary, they'll have a runoff, and then they'll have the general.
It doesn't really, everything you just talked about, doesn't really tell us a whole lot about the state of the election. It tells us a lot about the state of Donald Trump.
Well, but I think the two parties are kind of mirror images of each other in that regard right now. In the Republican Party, primary elections are a fight over how much you love the president. And in the Democratic Party, they are fights over how far to the left of Chairman Mao you can get.
Says the Democrat on the stage.
Yeah, I'm a great Democrat. Just ask any Democrat you know. But right now, the two parties are both engaged in this sort of circular firing squad mechanic, right? Where each side, these primary elections have just become purity tests. And they're purity tests over different things. But that's not actually what these elections are supposed to be for, right? Political parties are organizations that exist to win and exercise political power. And these partisan nominating contests are supposed to be figuring out who's going to be the best person to make sure that my side is in charge. And the parties can't even do that right now.
But political parties aren't monoliths. That we talk about the Republican Party and the Democratic Party or the Libertarian Party. But what primaries are about are those internal fights where they try to figure out, 1, what they are, and 2, how they win elections.
Right. It's the same way that cartel leaders come to power in any sort of cartel, right? Is that there's an internal fight over who is going to command the cartel. Right, and then we nominate those people for president, and other people get to be their underlings. Works the same in these cartels as in any other cartel.
Well, we're waiting for the same thing to happen in the governor's primary for GOP, whether President Trump's going to come and endorse John James or someone else in that primary, and he's waiting a long time to have to make that choice because in the Texas one, he had a lot of competing interests.
Yeah.
Didn't want to have to pick a side. We haven't seen him pick a side yet.
And he basically said after last night's results, he's now going to, allegedly, and then he wants the other candidate to drop out. We'll see if that actually happens.
Right, when El Mencho picks a side, that's the side.
Okay, we've got time just for a couple. Oh, way in the back, yeah.
Hi, my name's Doc. My wife
Doc.
and I have lived here in Farmington for 30 years. I have a question about what is the appetite for campaign finance reform in Lansing?
I have a follow-up question to that. What do you mean by campaign finance reform? Because that's very much in the eye of the beholder, and I'm genuinely interested.
Well, just because the amount of money that it takes to be able to run for office is obscene these days. And with what Zoe had talked about earlier, we're going to be inundated with campaign ads all the way through November. And it's out of control. And there's somewhat of an appetite for this in Washington, but I'm wondering what it's like in Lansing.
So if you mean the elected officials in Lansing, virtually none, right? Because they are all up for election this year and they want to raise a bunch of money so that they can get their jobs back. But part of the problem that campaign finance reform efforts run into, and I know John can talk about this as well, is the First Amendment, right? It's a very uncomfortable topic for a lot of people, but like money is political speech. And the First Amendment protects political speech, including paid political speech, and we know this because the founders were literally all engaged in it.
Right. I mean, I think in short, we're not going to see anything happen. As long as the rules are benefiting the incumbents or work for them, those are the rules that we're going to play by.
And yet, if there was a question that was as simple as get money out of politics.
Yeah, that's adorable.
Get Doritos out of my hands. Like,
That
what?
that
Do you see what I did there?
yeah, that gentleman asked me if I would sign his petition on the way in. It was really sweet.
Okay, I think we have time again for maybe one or two, and we're going to get to you. Let's do this. You will be the last question. How about that? Okay.
You've had your hand up all night.
Yeah, the whole
Yeah.
time. So you get to
Okay.
go.
So I see Kaloli back there, and then we're going to end over here, Kaloli. Yes, okay.
Hey, one question I have is about the role of AI data centers in the
Yes.
upcoming election. It seems like one issue that a lot of Republicans and Democrats are both angry about.
Yes.
So I'm curious your thoughts on how you think that's going to affect the primary and then the general here in
Man,
Michigan.
we got all the way to 8:03. We almost got out of here, and then you had to bring. We almost made it.
I literally sometimes take notes of things I want to make sure we hit, and data centers was in my handwriting in big old caps, and I was shocked that it took us this long to get there because I was going to make sure we did. And again, I sound like I'm a ringer for my own show, which I guess I am. But one of the things that Richard Chuba, the pollster, actually asked about was data centers. And so today, on today's show, we spent a good 10 minutes just talking about I don't know if the word is oddity, but the fact that it really hasn't solidified yet in a Republican or Democratic issue as whether you're for or against, and that rather it has much more to do with if you're close to one or not, right? And that as they populate more and as Republicans and Democrats decide to start taking issues on AI, that we'll start to have a better sense of whether it's a Republican issue or a Democratic issue. But right now, it's really fascinating what Richard found, and I really hope you'll take a listen because he can do a much better job than I can in 30 seconds than the 10 minutes.
Yeah,
that he went all about
his
it.
polling information was fascinating because, like with almost any of the projects Adrian and I work on an issue locally, if we get 15 people, let alone somebody like this, to show up at a city meeting, the article gets written, the community hates X, and therefore it must be bad and it must die. We see the same thing happen with data centers all the time, except every one of us are using them. We're on our phones, our kids are playing games, we're live streaming our shows on our TV sets, we're streaming or whatever. We're using them all the time, and it's only going to grow, so we have to have them. But there is a culture of fear right now, and I don't necessarily blame people for it, and it's on both sides. We always talked about in college that politics was on this like plane, and the left was over here and the right's over there, but now it's that other theory, it's a circle, because you have left Democrats and right Republicans sitting there sponsoring bills to stop data centers because it's become such a whirlwind and a tizzy. Sometime over the last 6 months, it's like gotten crazy and people are worried. And they aren't hearing all the information yet. They're just like, no. Maybe slow down is a good idea, but no seems like somewhat of an interesting decision already. And in the polling, what it showed is that just like when we said, if you only looked on X about the U.S. Senate Dem primary, you would think that Haley Stevens was the worst person that ever lived. Then you go out in the real world, nobody knows anything about it. Same thing was true in this polling. Most people did not know a whole lot about data centers and weren't sure what they were going to do. This was especially apparent in the split, like a lot of other issues we talk about on education attainment level. If you went to college, you knew a lot more about it than if you didn't.
Yeah, and I think it's also broadly symptomatic of what we were talking about, going back to the point about Michigan's economy. At some point, the people of our state are going to have to find a way to say yes to something other than an auto plant from 1977. right? Maybe it's data centers, maybe it's wind and solar. I can give you a laundry list of things that people in Michigan have said no to, but like if you would like to see your kids and grandkids more than just on the holidays, you're going to have to find a way to get to yes on something.
Well, data centers are kind of the new interstate highways that everyone sees a lot of economic benefits to them, but they don't want them running through their city, town, or township. And then the other thing is the theory behind data centers is that if you plunk it there, then benefits will come along with it.
Right.
But what's the evidence that that's going to happen? It's so new.
That's the same argument about the automobile, right? That's how we built Detroit, right? There were a whole lot of places that didn't want dirty automobile factories to move into their city. And in Detroit, we said, hell yeah, we'll take them. Right? And Detroit became the richest city in America on the basis of being willing to say yes. If we would like to be an economic leader again and have people move here instead of flee our state, we're going to have to say yes to something.
And it's a heck of a lot easier for us to make money when we're on the no side and the fear side than it is.
No's my favorite answer.
On the pass side. And so we watch this stuff happen, and it is really important. The same thing's happening on housing right now. One set of bills comes out and it basically is going to wipe out all zoning. And what you're going to end up with is if your community looked at like X, Y, or Z, it could be anything. Now, you could have 1 million duplexes. There was a development in Northville that could have twice as many houses as it does now. And most people are like, wait, I don't want twice as many houses in my downtown. You put them somewhere else or further away, sure, but that won't be the case.
I promise this will be the last time I do this, but a few months ago, I was fascinated by this question that you had about data centers and what the sort of political calculus is. And so we had a reporter, David Chen from the New York Times, who'd gone around the country. He was in Georgia and he was in a couple other states, Virginia. Right, Virginia has just seen this huge amount because of the government increase in data centers. And what he found was that all of the politicians who ran against data centers, verbally, loudly against data centers, won in their elections. Okay, final question.
What do you...
Second, yeah, hello.
Kalili's been waiting for you.
Yes, I've been waiting for you. I was just wondering what you think of Perry Johnson.
He has a lot of money.
Yeah. Well, first, let's see. John, tell us who Perry Johnson is for folks who may not know.
He is a apparently very successful business person who's earned a lot of money. And like Adrian and I always say, if we ever earned a lot of money, we would be buying a yacht and moving to the Caribbean. We would not be running for governor. There are a lot of people who have a lot of money.
John's wife agrees.
People who are like, boy, I could be famous. I'm rich and now I can be popular. Kind of seems like what he's doing. I'm not sure he has like a super big plan, but he's got a ton of cash and he's got advisors that are willing to work with him to put that out there. Whether he can sell that personality, I'm not convinced yet, but he's been trying for a while.
I'm sure that Perry Johnson is a kind person and he's nice to widows and children and small puppies. But my least favorite type of person in politics is the sort of person who's running for office because they want to be somebody. Perry Johnson has more money than you or I will ever need, but he really, really, really wants to be somebody. He likes running for office. He likes to be the sort of person to get up in front of a room full of people and say, me. It should be me. Not anybody else. It should be me. I mean, more power to him. Like, it's his money and this is America, so God bless.
So obviously they wanted to hold back their thoughts about Perry Johnson. Didn't feel like they were going to be real accurate.
We'll know really fast. He is spending a truckload of cash, and he let the secret slip out. Trump told me I had to get to 20% before he'd take me seriously for an endorsement. So he is taking a shot right now at boosting himself up
to 20%.
Well, but
he's running for 20%.
That's enough, though. I mean, when we polled this last cycle, a Donald Trump endorsement in a Republican primary is worth 25 points.
So remember, like 2 minutes ago when I promised I wouldn't do an It's Just Politics plug again, we had Perry Johnson on the show 2 weeks ago. And so if you want to hear a full conversation with him and sort of the issues and why he is running, I would highly suggest taking a listen to that. Because, again, these two didn't give you enough to think about. Before we wrap, I want to do a final kind of round. And Rick, I'm going to include you in this too. Hey, John Selleck, what should folks who are in this room be thinking about watching between now and November, and really what is going to be a historic election? I feel like we say that every 2 years. This is the election that matters the most, but this really is a big one. What should folks be keeping an eye on between now and November?
I thought when I saw the Iran war start, I imagined like a big table covered in buttons that the president could push, and I feel like he's pushed a lot of them. I don't know how many more he has, but he is the ultimate straw that stirs the drink in which we are living.
Ooh, Reggie Jackson, I love that.
Yeah, so it's going to be, today we can get really worried about gas prices went up 12 cents in the last day, like Bridge, Michigan reported. But by tomorrow, they could be lower because they'll bring in a bunch more oil from Venezuela or something else will happen. It's how many different ups and downs of stories will happen between now and the election. And if he ends on an upswing, that's all that will matter for Republicans.
Interesting. Adrian?
Turn off your television, smash your cell phone into 10,000 pieces.
And touch grass.
No, go to your next township board meeting or your next city council meeting, right?
Amen.
I'm gonna tell you a little story about what I've been doing with my free time. About 18 months ago, the company that provides well water to the neighborhood where I live, it's a beautiful neighborhood on the Grand River, they started hustling the old widows in my neighborhood that they had to sign a contract for water, and they couldn't water their flowers with the well water and all these restrictions on how they could use their water. And then we all got a lead notice in the mail. And so I started hustling, right? And helped all of my nice neighbors muscle up on this water company. And I went to a bunch of local officials to find funding to connect us to municipal water. I got a bunch of people organized, and there was just a meeting tonight about getting the permits from Eagle for us to connect to municipal water. That is going to have more impact on people's lives than any of the BS that I get paid so much money to do in politics. And that's what you should do with your time. If you want to be effective in politics, go to your next city council meeting. I guarantee you're going to hear something that's going to outrage you. Go talk to your neighbors about it.
Ooh, on fire.
Yeah, I'm not even sure I want to follow that.
You want to just say Big Gretch out?
Big Rick. Along those lines, that one of the things that candidates look for in a neighborhood are people they call opinion leaders. And it could be, the barber, someplace where there's a lot of traffic, a prominent person, but their word matters to the people around them, and the people around them then take that out and tell, someone else. One, pay attention to opinion leaders, and vis-a-vis what Adrian said, is pick a couple of things that really matter to you. Because right now there's a whole lot of things going on in the world that the Middle East is blowing up, that Washington is blowing up. It's big, it's confusing, and sometimes, and a lot of times it's meant to be confusing. That there's a whole industry out there, that's competing industries that are working very hard to make you angry.
You're supposed to look me in the eyes when you say that.
And my final thing is, Rick said to be an opinion leader or to look for an opinion leader. And mine would simply be that I think it's okay to become an opinion leader yourself and have other folks look to you for that. That is tonight's Issues and Ale. All of you thought leaders and opinion leaders, I want to just take a note. Michigan Public and NPR has been in the headlines recently. We are not used to that, right? We're usually the ones who are bringing you the headlines. But events like this, if this is powerful to you, right? If this means something to be able to come out to a community event, no one shouted at each other, right? No one was like holding up their phones to take video of some like crazy moment. this can happen throughout the country. NPR is a set of hundreds of public radio stations, just like Michigan Public. So you're here, but across the country, there's other folks right now who are at other public radio stations who are doing the same thing. It's sort of this fabric that we're creating. It sounds dorky, but I want to just remind folks that an event like tonight is free, and it's because of folks just like you. So I'm certainly not going to give the number, 888-258-9866. Or the website, michiganpublic.org/donate. But if you feel, that this kind of this thing that we're all creating together is more important than ever, you can make sure it happens. It is because of you now without federal funding. And with that, there's swag. So let's do a quick Ann Holder. Oh, Ann. Okay, and you can come up afterwards because there's so many folks. But this is my favorite thank you gift right now, and it's the I Support the First Amendment tote bag, and it's huge. So Ann gets one.
You do have to support the First Amendment, though.
Right, do you support the First? Oh, she's giving a thumbs up. Great. And then Deborah Cohn. Oh, stop it. Deborah and I were talking earlier, and Deborah taught art and Spanish to high school students for decades. So Deborah absolutely deserves the thank you and all of our bags for being a part of our community. And thank you, everyone, for coming out tonight. And thank you for our panel. Rick Pluta, this was fabulous.
So
Adrian
much fun.
Hammond, John Selleck, we owe you a beer.
Bring the
Thank you.
energy next time, though.
Right, yeah. Okay, everyone, drive safe. Good night.
All right, I'm going to hang out, but I got to run to the bathroom.